Hey everybody, it's Eduardo Jackson, CEO, founder, creator of the CinemaDraft game. As we've been growing our game, we have some new players and newer players to some concepts of daily fantasy sports and also general game theory type games. So I wanted to create a basic strategy guide on how you can start creating some credible call sheets that'll help you compete with some of the big boys. So let's take a look at some of these concepts here. So we'll go into one of our ongoing tournaments, one of our contests, which runs every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Oh, well, that's the theater lock, which is another thing we need to discuss, as well as, but it runs at every Thursday night, 10 p.m. Pacific time. And basically, and that's actually a good place to start, which is the concept of the theater lock. So as you know, throughout the week, once the talent pool is set up, and we try to get them out as early as possible, usually around Sunday nights, you get a screen count. And you can usually find the screen count over here, next to this little reel right here. And this is what the either current screen count is or what the estimated screen count will be. If it's a new release, one that has yet to reach the marketplace, these are generally estimated screen counts. They're almost never a hard count because they haven't released yet. If it's an ongoing release, it will be what it is currently in the theater right now. And based off of that is how we set our release types. And we'll just assume you know all the rules to the game. If you need to, you can find the rules here on the Rules tab and click How to Play. And it'll show you everything you need to do to submit a call sheet. And most importantly, it'll tell you what the release types are. These are very important because release types are kind of like positions in basketball. Whereas if you are filling out, or fantasy football, if you're filling out lineup on fantasy football, you need to have a quarterback, a running back, wide receiver, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here, our version of that are our release types, wide, limited platforms, since you must have at least one actor of each. Those are kind of like our position, as positions would be to a fantasy football lineup. So let's get back to our contests. And so basically, what you're trying to look for is value. And the just easy way to explain value is getting the most out of your your salary budget. So we have 100,000 in salary. You have to spread it over 10 actors, which I guess is an average of $10,000 each. But you want to make sure you're spending that money wisely. That the movies from the actors from the movies you're picking will give you more bang for your buck. You're also concerned with these stars right here, these headliners, because headliner points are worth 40% more. So, for example, if Beauty and the Beast were to make 10 million in a weekend, you would get 10 points if it was a wide release at 1 point per million for Luke Evans, but you get 14 points for Emma Watson at 1 point per million plus the 40% headliner bonus. So you generally want to get headliners where you can. Sometimes movies are either so big that that if you've already got them for headliners, then you might want to add an actor or two in addition just to get the raw points. But wherever possible, you want to get headliners. So on a weekend like this, where if you sort by salary, you'll see the highest valued ones are the Fate of the Furious and The Circle. You also want to take into account how long these movies have been out at the box office. For example, Fate of the Furious, it's going into its third weekend. It started off, it's had like a really big opening gross. It did 98 million its first weekend, and then in its second weekend did 38 million. You can check here, Box Office Mojo, which is a really good resource to get an idea of how movies are performing and even get an idea historically of what some of their genres are. You see 98 million its first weekend, 38 million its second weekend. So it's dropping. That 61% drop is a pretty significant drop. But for these front-heavy action-based movies, it's not terribly uncommon. So after this, you might want to see, here's a great example, click similar movies. Similar movies to it would be, say, Furious 7, Mission Impossible. Let's take a look at Furious 7, which is straight out of the same franchise. And if you look at its weekend performance, its first weekend, crazy numbers. Then the second weekend, it dropped by another 60%, and its third weekend by another 51%. So if we were to assume that it follows a similar trajectory, which it seems like it's doing so far, Then Fate of the Furious, if Fate of the Furious did 38 million its second weekend, then it's safe to assume, and it dropped by 60%, and its third weekend it dropped by another 51%. Excuse me. Then you could expect about 18, 19 million in its third weekend coming out. Now, what are we expecting out of a movie like The Circle, which is the second most expensive movie per actor out here on the talent pool? Well, it's kind of hard to tell. We don't have any hard and fast numbers yet. If you go to a site like Box Office Pro, which likes to give us uh, weekend forecasts and estimates, there's really not a ton to go on. So a site I like to use is a site called hsx.com. They treat movies like stocks, and their ratio is pretty much 1-to-1. So each dollar, it kind of represents $1 million in box office. So let's look up The Circle. Just get an idea, since it's not Wednesday yet, and Box Office Pro doesn't have its projections out yet. So The Circle, they're looking at 40 million overall, with an opening weekend of 12 million. Now, to be honest with you, that feels kind of low, but that would put it in line as the second grossing movie in its opening weekend to Fate of the Furious in its third weekend. So you have to so here's another thing I like to consider. Is the gap between Fate and the Furious and the next movie, or is the gap between the most expensive salaried movie and its next competition so wide that you still want to pay up, as we say, for that number one movie? I don't know. I'm actually thinking that I'm actually going to fade, which means avoid Fate and the Furious altogether, and I'm going to construct a call sheet that emphasizes The Circle. Now, since the actors with stars are your headliners and give you 40% more, I say we start off with getting a headliner stack. That is these two, as we call a stack of The Circle. And for good measure, let's throw in, and you click on the movie to get a little more detail and find out who the actors are. And these are arranged, generally by salary, highest to lowest. So then I say, let's get the lovely Porna Jagannathan, who's among the cheapest of the available actors in this movie. Let's add her to our call sheet. So that way we have what I like to call a 3-pack of The Circle at our disposal, ready to do some damage. Okay, so now we're left with about 50,000 remaining for roughly 7 slots, which I like doing the math at this point. 50,600 divided by 7 slots, so you're averaging about 7,200 per actor left. That's actually not bad. We can even probably do even one more with The Circle, but I think we can still get a little more value with some other remaining movies, as long as we get some smart headliners. So now at this point, what I like to do is think about what is going to perform in its release type. So for example, what can equalize the points between actors in a movie are based on its release type. So for example, let's say Beauty and the Beast does 10 million this weekend, which in its fourth weekend, would be a little bit much, but not outside the realm of possibility. Now, what if Born in China did another 5 million this weekend, which isn't likely since it did 5 million in its opening weekend and is probably going to drop by 50% or more, especially since Earth Day is coming past. But let's just say, for sake of argument, that Born in China does 10 million. Now, at limited release, we know that you get 1 point per 100,000. So if Born in China does 5 million, that's essentially 10 points. But Beauty and the Beast, if it stays wide, if it does 10 million, then it only gets 10 points. So if you're looking at the cost to add Beauty and the Beast to your call sheet, 11,500, you might as well just go with Born in China, because you're saving at least $5,000 to almost $6,000 in salary by going with the lower priced but still just effective actors in this release type. So that's why I always like to look out for. I always want to figure out what are the movies and the actors you can get from these movies in these release types that are going to get the most bang for your buck. All right. So another way you can kind of look at that You can go by salary, so you can even sort by release type, and so you can just kind of scroll through the movies in each release type to get an idea of what's doing what. All right, so let's just say, so I think a movie that's got a little bit of potential, and that is, so I think The Circle is a good start. But another movie that's got good potential is How to Be a Latin Lover. There we go. It's on over 1,000 screens, estimated at this point. It's got a really attractive cast. Oh, let's go back to that cast, actually. How to Be, there we go. And sometimes if you get stuck, you can always refresh and try again. It might just be a little cache issue. There you go. So if you click on this movie, you see it's got a very attractive cast. People you've seen and heard from in other movies. It's on 1,000 screens, which puts it, fairly top end as far as limited releases tend to go. I want some exposure to this movie, and by exposure, I mean I want to have exposure to its potential upside. If it does well, I want to make sure I've got a piece of it. So I'm going to get a headliner stack from this movie, especially since they're nice and cheap. And I might even throw in a couple more just in case. Because for this movie so if this movie does even say 4 million, then you're looking at 8 CinemaDraft points each, or like 11 or 12 if you have these two headliners. So we've done a pretty good thing. We've gotten some more actors to fill up our call sheet. We still have some money left over. 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 slots left over. We still need a platform release, and the one that did the best for us last week was Colossal. It might even expand some more on some screens, but because it's been out for, I think this will be its 3rd or 4th weekend, it might not have a lot of, juice left in the tank. So for this movie, I think I'm just going to get one headliner, the cheaper the two. Wherever you can, always be conscious of the money you're spending. Save money, because you might need that for a film later on. And another movie that's opening up, which I think has a lot of potential, is called Slight. And this one is a limited release. It's only on 550 screens, but there's a lot of buzz around it. It's from the guys who brought us the Runaway 2017 movie Get Out. So I think Slight's got potential. It's got an interesting, diverse cast. It's only on 550 screens, so it's barely limited, but I like its potential. So I'm going to do a headliner stack here of Jacob Lattimore and Dua Hill, and I think that gets us a full call sheet. Yes, it does, with 1,600 left to spare. Another thing you want to be cognizant of as you're creating your call sheet is a general rule of thumb is you want to leave about maybe 5% of your budget left over if you can. So on $100,000, if you can get it, $5,000 or under, you're doing pretty well. It doesn't feel like you're leaving too much money on the table. Now, obviously, this can vary week to week depending on what the movies are, but generally, I like to use up as much of my budget as I can within, say, 5%. All right. So another concept too that's also good to embrace is that sometimes you want to do what's called stars, and this is actually I like this call sheet. Well, let's just submit this call sheet. And there's another concept as far as basic strategy goes on weeks where the value is really well defined. Like, so on a weekend where the Fate of the Furious opens and nothing really big opens against it, you might want to construct what is called a stars and scrubs strategy. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So stars and scrubs, basically, you're going high dollar. You're going for the big money ones because that's where all the value is, and then you're kind of figuring it out from there on out. So on a weekend like this weekend, I would say a stars and scrubs strategy would mostly be a headliner from Fate of the Furious. Always get your headliners where you can, and then I would probably stack headliners from The Circle. So these are your stars, and now you've got basically 42,000 or about 6,000 each to fill in your quote-unquote scrubs. All right, so if you want to look at your scrubs, then you keep sorting by salary, and now we're going from lowest to highest. And on this end, I would say Born in China, is a good candidate for our scrubs. Nice and cheap, $6,000 and $5,200 respectively. And they're both headliners, so that's excellent. And so now we've got 31,000 left for another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slots, so still around 6,000 each. We're doing well. So then I think you probably want to get some Colossal, since it performed for us so well previously. So definitely start with your headliner stack. And then what's also just kind of quote unquote good business is starting at the low end to get these cheaper actors and working your way up. All right. So that way you're still getting, the same amount of exposure to this film, but you're not spending the same amount of money. All right. Let's go back one here. And so now we only have one slot left. It's about 6,000 overall. And so now looks like, what can we afford? We've got all of our release types covered. And so now, you know what? Let's see if we can get one more colossal actor. There we go. Rakia Bernard. And so this is the epitome of a Stars and Scrubs call sheet. All right. So now you take a look. You've got, your stars appear. We've basically kind of punted. Now the concept of punting is basically you're just kind of giving up on a category to an extent, giving up on a slot just based off of pure budgetary needs. We're somewhat punting a little bit with us doing this 5-pack of Colossal, but the money that we've saved down here affords us to spend up with these high dollar actors up here with these movies that we know are going to perform pretty well. 18 million estimated for Fate of the Furious, and then at least 12, 13, 15 million for The Circle. All right. And it's a pretty headliner heavy call sheet, which I like to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 headliners. That's excellent. So make sure wherever possible, you're always getting as many headliners in as possible. So we'll submit that call sheet. And then after that, just stay tuned to your email box for updates and follow us on social media. You can find us on all of the popular social media outlets from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Make sure you subscribe also to our podcasts, where we're always getting interesting guests and topics, and also going over strategy week to week. I think some of the best players in this game have participated in our strategy sessions and have let themselves get better week to week. And we also have a group chat, which we're quite proud of. It's small but burgeoning. You can find our group chat here on our CinemaDraft homepage, right here on the notes section, and just make sure you click it to join the group chat. Be part of the fun. Named after one of my favorite cinematic characters, Marcus Graham. But yeah, join the group, join the discussion. You see some of our favorites from the podcast and also the game. Just chopping it up. You get a nice idea of what strategies are on trend and what to look out for. It's always lively and it's very active and engaged. We look forward to you participating. Thanks for listening. And when you're not studying up on CinemaDraft, go see a movie or something.